Hello and welcome to another episode of Our Shakespeare, where I talk about Shakespeare from a 21st century American perspective. Today, I would like to share my top 10 Shakespeare plays. Now, this video was inspired by a viewer who left a comment requesting my top 10 favorite Shakespeare plays, and so that's what inspired this video. And so if there's something you'd like to hear me talk about on this channel, please leave a comment and let me know. Now, before I get started, I do want to say these are what I consider my top 10 favorite Shakespeare plays, not what I think are the most objectively good Shakespeare plays, or even the 10 Shakespeare plays that I think are most worth study. These are the ones that resonate with me as an audience member and as a theater artist, and so I'll just leave it at that. So, let's get to it. Now, before I give you my top 10, I have to say that narrowing it down to 10 plays is really, really tough because every play Shakespeare wrote has a lot of good in it. And so there are 5 plays that I really wanted to put in the list of the top 10 but didn't quite make it there. So I'm going to start with 5 honorable mentions. And my 5 honorable mentions are Twelfth Night, Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, A Comedy of Errors, and Henry IV, Part 1 and 2. And so those are the ones that I really, really like and didn't quite make it onto the top 10, but there you have it. So, let's begin with the top 10. My number 10 pick is The Tempest, a wonderful Shakespeare play. This is one of the few plays on this list that I don't have some kind of personal connection with, of having acted in it, or having directed it, or having done a video for this channel yet. But The Tempest is an excellent play that I like all the same. Maybe my biggest memory of it is seeing it in London at the Royal Shakespeare Company in 2006, getting to see Patrick Stewart play Prospero. Even though I thought that production was very strange because they decided to set it in the Arctic, it was still a magical play all the same. The thing that I really like about it is the theme of family reconciliation, as well as Shakespeare's injection of magic into the story. I'm a big fan of whenever Shakespeare busts out the idea of magic, which you will see later in my top 10 list as well. My number 9 is Henry V. Henry V is the only history play on my top 10. I tend to gravitate more towards the comedies and tragedies and problem plays than I do to the history plays for whatever reason, but I do quite like Henry V. I've seen many good productions of it. Obviously, there are a couple of great film versions of it, namely the Kenneth Branagh film version, which really put him on the map. But the thing that I really like about it is the idea of a young leader figuring out the role of leadership in sort of a trial-by-fire situation. Also, any scene with Catherine in it, whether she's learning to speak English or her awkward scene with Henry himself, those scenes are delightful. And then also the scenes with the lower class individuals that Henry used to hang out with, those scenes can be really quite heartbreaking. And so I think Henry V really has a lot going for it as a play. My number 8 is a play that I think many people would put much higher on their list, and that is the Shakespeare classic Hamlet. This is a play that I do think is excellent. It's a play I've had a chance to act in, but it's a play that doesn't really speak to me emotionally. When I watch it, it doesn't grab me emotionally, although it is a play that I really connect with intellectually and philosophically. But because it doesn't really grab me emotionally, I don't have it much higher on my list, and I don't come out of that play really feeling great. Also, I think the play is too long, but there is so much in it, and the thing that I really like about it is the element of meta-theater. And at some point, maybe I'll do a video of Hamlet in meta-theater, but until then, we'll just leave it here as my number 8. My number 7 pick is Much Ado About Nothing. This is a play that I always enjoy. It's a play I've acted in once as Claudio. It's also a play I've done 2 videos for on this channel. One, Short Spear, which is my series where I summarize a play and share a couple of brief thoughts about it. I've done one of those videos, as well as a video talking about the concept of fake news as it relates to Much Ado About Nothing. But the thing that I like about this play is I just think it's a whole lot of fun. It's very relatable, the story is. The relationships are very relatable. It feels very contemporary. It doesn't feel as Shakespeare-y as Shakespeare Plays do. But also I think the gulling of Benedict scene is one of the funniest scenes Shakespeare wrote. And I think the characters of Beatrice and Benedict and Dogberry, among others, are very memorable characters. And so, Much Ado About Nothing is my number 7. My number 6 is another classic Shakespeare tragedy, though kind of the opposite of Much Ado About Nothing, and that would be Othello. Othello is a wonderful play. I have acted in that. I've acted in it. I've not done an individual video on it, although Othello does come up in my video on Shakespeare's Outsiders. What I really like about Othello, besides the discussion of race, which I do find very interesting, is the way Iago is a master manipulator, and I think it's really compelling to watch him not only manipulating the people around him, but as an audience member, to watch him manipulate us as an audience, to try to get us on his side and rooting for him as he carries out his scheme. You see the same thing in Richard III, but for whatever reason, it grabs me more in Othello, so Othello is on my list as number 6. And my number 5 Shakespeare play is actually the only play on this list that I have had a chance to direct a production of, and that is A Midsummer Night's Dream. And I haven't done any videos on this play yet, but I really, really enjoy it. And the thing that I love about it is that it just brings a smile to my face. I think it's funny, I think it's romantic, I think it's fun, and I really enjoy the intersection of the Greek mythology with the romantic comedy, kind of love triangle thing going on, along with the magical fairy world. And I can't help but coming out of any production of A Midsummer Night's Dream with a smile on my face. And so it's delightful, makes me happy. It's my number 5. My number 4 may be the most surprising pick on my list for many people, and that is the play Timon of Athens, which is a play that most people have never even heard of. And even those who have heard of it may be among those people who think that the play is actually not a finished production. Many people, many scholars suspect that the play is unfinished and that it was never actually produced in Shakespeare's time. But it is a play that I really, really love. I have had the chance as an actor to play the role of Timon in a production of it during grad school. And also, my video about Timon of Athens is my number 1 viewed video on my channel. And so I know there is an audience for this play. It's also a play that I think might be even more relevant today than it was when it was actually written, but who knows? The thing that I really like about it, even though I do agree that on an objective level, maybe it's not as good as much of the rest of Shakespeare's plays, but what I love about it is how cynical and single-minded it is in its pursuit of its themes and its message. And it has a lot to say about money, it has a lot to say about relationships. The play is very cynical, which I think can turn a lot of people off. But unlike most of Shakespeare's plays, it doesn't have, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it, the baggage of complexity. This one is really simple, really straightforward and to the point, and while that may not be for everybody, I certainly quite enjoy it. I think it's really sharp, I think it's really satirical, and I think it has a lot to say, both to Shakespeare's time as well as to our time today. So it's very high on my list. My number 3 is The Winter's Tale. The Winter's Tale is a play that I've actually done a couple of videos on already. I did a short spear of The Winter's Tale as well as an exploration of the role of time in the play. It's so high on my list because, well, obviously I love it. It's a play that I've had a chance to act in twice, and it's a play I've seen multiple productions of. What I really enjoy about it is how you come out of it feeling like you've actually watched 2 different plays, because the first half of the play is very dark, is very tragic in its tone, and then a bear comes out and chases the tragedy away, and the second half is an outright romantic comedy, and not just that, it's a rustic comedy compared to the courtly tragedy. The 2 acts, well, it's 5 acts, but the 2 halves are polar opposites of one another, and I really, really appreciate that. And I also appreciate the theme of time and how time heals all wounds, and also the themes of reconciliation and redemption. And so I think it's a wonderful play that demands a wide viewership. My number 2 is also going to be a controversial choice for a variety of reasons, but it's a play that maybe I'm a little bit biased about, and that is the play The Merchant of Venice. And the reason why it's so high on my list is because I love it, but really it's, I think, because it's the play that really made me fall in love with Shakespeare. I didn't really like Shakespeare much when I was younger, until in college I had the chance to act in a production of The Merchant of Venice. And that opportunity really opened my eyes to the beauty of Shakespeare's language, the richness of Shakespeare's characters and themes. And so that's why it's so high on my list. It really was my first love of Shakespeare experience. Now, I am very aware that there's a lot of controversy around this play, and it's an open question for many people about whether this play should be considered anti-Semitic. I think there is a very valid argument to be made that it is, and that might be a question that I tackle in a future video. But beyond that, what I do like about this play is how complex the characters are. Even Shylock is a very complex character, especially for a villain character. But also, I really like the theme of mercy versus justice. I think that's really interesting. And it's one that really speaks to me whenever I read or watch the play. But intellectually, what really fascinates me about this play is how much our perception of it has changed over time. The play was written to be an outright comedy, and it is structured that way. And yet when we perform it today, because our views of anti-Semitism have changed, and our views of the idea of lending money has changed, lending money and interest, now the play plays like a tragedy almost, and it is easy to consider Shylock almost, maybe not an anti-hero, but a sympathetic character, even though he is very clearly set up to be the villain. And so I just really like how we can look at the way a play can change over time in reference to the culture that is viewing it. And so I find that really fascinating, and that's why it's my number 2. And my number 1, and I feel very confident about putting this one at my number 1, because over the years, when people have asked me my favorite Shakespeare play, this one, more often than any other, has been the one that I say, and that is King Lear. And King Lear is a play that I've acted in twice, in 2 different roles, and in addition to that, I've done 3 videos on it. I've done a short spear on it, I have done an exploration of King Lear and parenting video, as well as a film review video of the Anthony Hopkins film. So check out those videos if you can. But what I love about this play, and the reason why it's number 1, is because it just makes me feel whenever I watch it. I feel for the characters. I feel for Lear, and I feel like when I'm watching it, that I am watching, political intrigue. I'm watching a family drama. I am watching the very real effects of poverty and being out in nature and not being protected. But more than anything, it's such a brutally honest portrayal of aging and how it can affect an individual, but also how it can affect their relationships with other people. And that's not even to get into the ideas of power and the power dynamics at work. This is a play that has so much going on, and yet, even though it has so many things going on, it feels very, very intimate, while also being very big. I mean, it's also about, there's a war going on in part of it, and it still feels very tight and about people who feel very complex and rich and interesting. And for those reasons and more, King Lear is my number 1 Shakespeare play. So there you have it. There's my top 10. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to click like. If you enjoy the videos that I'm making, please subscribe to my channel. But perhaps even more important, let me know in the comments what your favorite Shakespeare plays are. And if you disagree with my list, I would love to hear that too. I'm very much in favor of a robust conversation when it comes to Shakespeare. And then, as I mentioned earlier in the video as well, if there is a topic you would like me to address on my Shakespeare channel, maybe it's a play you'd like me to talk about, or maybe you heard the phrase folio and quarto or iambic pentameter, and you're like, what the heck is that all about? I would be happy to consider doing videos on a variety of things. So leave a comment and maybe I'll make a video about your suggestion. So, thank you for watching. Fare you well. I commend you to your own content.